Hi, this is Tammy again, and welcome back to Lesson 10, Not for Jazz. Let's read the article and then answer the question, what happened to the clavichord? It says, my father was shocked. As you can see, there's a lady, and she's playing a musical instrument. The article says, what happened to the clavichord? We have an old musical instrument. Musical means music is something that has a pleasant sound, something that's tuneful. And an instrument is something that we perform on an instrument. We don't sing it, we perform it on an instrument. It is called a clavichord. Well, a clavichord is a rectangular, small keyboard instrument. It was made in Germany in 1681. Our clavichord is kept in the living room. It has belonged to our family for a long time. The instrument was bought by my grandfather many years ago. The instrument, recently, it was damaged by a visitor. Recently means something at a recent time, not long ago. And damaged means to inflict physical harm on something. So when we do that, we impair its value. She tried to play jazz on it. Jazz is a type of music that Black Americans started. She struck the keys too hard, and two of the strings were broken. Strings or keys are the little buttons on the clavicle instrument, or the buttons that we strike on a piano. And strings are material that's made of thread, and they're wound together into a long, thin length. My father was shocked. Shock is to feel surprise and to be upset at the same time. Now we are not allowed to touch it. Touch means to come into contact with something or someone. It is being repaired by a friend of my father's. So let's read this article again. We have an old musical instrument. Instrument that we play, not sing, that has a nice sound to it. It is called a clavichord, a rectangular small musical instrument. It was made in Germany in 1681. Our clavichord is kept in the living room. It has belonged to our family for a long time. The instrument was bought by my grandfather many years ago. Recently, not long ago, it was damaged. It was harmed, and it caused the value to diminish by a visitor. She tried to play jazz, a type of music originated by Black Americans, on it. She struck the keys or the buttons on the clavichord too hard, and two of the strings, the long, thin material that's wound together on the clavichord, were broken. My father was shocked. He was surprised and upset. Now we are not allowed to touch it or come in contact with it. It is being repaired by a friend of my father's. Now let's answer the question, what happened to the clavichord? Well, a visitor tried to play jazz on it, and she struck the keys too hard and she broke it. Let's answer some questions about the article we've just read. Do we own an old clavichord, or do we own a new piano? We own an old clavichord. When was it made? It was made in 1681. Who bought the instrument many years ago? The instrument was bought by the writer's grandfather many years ago. Who damaged it recently? A visitor damaged it recently. What did she try to do? She tried to play jazz on it and struck the keys too hard, and she broke the strings. What did she break? She broke the strings. Who is repairing it now? A friend of the writer's father is repairing it now. It was made in Germany in 1681. Let's read some questions and answers. Who built this bridge? Prisoners of war built this bridge in 1942. When was this bridge built? This bridge was built in 1942. Now, in the first question, we want to know who built the bridge. Who built this bridge? In the second question, we want to learn about the bridge. When was the bridge built? Now, we can say who built it. This bridge was built by prisoners of war in 1942. Who built it? It was built by prisoners of war in 1942. Now let's read these pairs of sentences. The first sentence tells us about a person, who, and the second sentence tells us about a thing, what or which. Workmen are building a new road outside my home. This sentence tells us who built or who is building a new road outside my home. A new road is being built outside my house. This sentence is telling us what is being built outside my house. The news agent delivers our papers every morning. This sentence tells us who delivers the newspapers every morning. Our papers are delivered every morning. This sentence tells us what is delivered every morning. Our papers. The postman delivered a letter this morning. This sentence tells us who delivers letters every morning. The postman delivers letters every morning. A letter was delivered this morning. This sentence tells us what is delivered every morning. A letter was delivered this morning. Now, there are two ways we can say things. We can say the police arrested the thief, or we can say the thief was arrested by the police. We can say he gave me a present, or we can say I was given a present. We can say the headmaster has punished the boy, or we can say the boy has been punished by the headmaster. Now let's answer these questions on the passage. Number 1 says, what is our old musical instrument called? Our old musical instrument is called a clavichord. Where was it made? It was made in Germany. Where is it kept? It is kept in our living room. When was it bought? It was bought many years ago. It was bought by my grandfather many years ago. When was it damaged? It was damaged recently. How many strings were broken? Well, let's see. How many strings were broken? of the strings were broken. How did my father feel about this? Well, my father was shocked. What aren't we allowed to do? We aren't allowed to touch it. What is being done to the clavichord? The clavichord is being repaired by a friend of my father's. Now, let's work on letter B. It says change the form of the phrases in italics. So let's change the form of the phrases in italics. It says, we have an old musical instrument. We call it a clavichord. Someone made it in Germany in 1681. We keep our clavichord in the living room. My grandfather bought the instrument many years ago. Recently, a visitor damaged it. She struck the keys too hard and broke 2 of the strings. This shocked my father. Now he does not allow us to touch it. A friend of my father's is repairing it. We have an old musical instrument. It is called a clavichord. Someone made it in Germany in 1681. It was made in Germany in 1681. We keep our clavichord in the living room. It's kept in the living room. My grandfather bought the instrument many years ago. It was bought by my grandfather many years ago. Recently, a visitor damaged it. Recently, a visitor, well, let's see what it says. Recently, it was damaged by a visitor. She struck the keys too hard and broke 2 of the strings. She struck the keys too hard and 2 of the strings broke. This shocked my father. My father was shocked. Now he does not allow us to touch it. Now we aren't allowed to touch it. A friend of my father's is repairing it. My father's friend is repairing it. Special difficulties, words that we often confused. Made in, made of, made from, and made by. We usually use made in when we're talking about a country. Something was made in a country. It was made in Germany. We use made of when we're talking about a material. When something is made of a material, such as the teapot is made of silver. We usually use made from when we're talking about a number of materials, such as glass is made from sand and lime. And we use made by when we're talking about someone. This cake was made by my sister. Now, we're going to put the correct words in the blanks. Is your watch made from gold? Number 2, these knives were made in Sheffield. Number 3, this cake was made from sugar, flour, butter, and eggs. Now, again, there are 2 ways we can say things. Instead of saying, he is one of my father's friends, we can say, he is a friend of my father's. Instead of saying, Tom lent me one of his books, we can say, Tom lent me a book of his. Instead of saying, he is one of my friends, we can say, he is a friend of mine. Now we're going to change the form of the phrases in italics. One of my records. He borrowed one of my records. I borrowed a record of his. I borrowed a record of his. Or excuse me, he borrowed one of my records. He borrowed a record of mine. He borrowed a record of mine. One of John's pictures. She showed me one of John's pictures. She showed me a picture of John. One of her ideas. It was one of her ideas. It was an idea of hers. One of your letters was found on my desk. A letter of yours was found on my desk. Some of their friends came to see me. Their friends came to see me. Or some friends of theirs came to see me. Multiple choice. The old musical instrument has been in the family for a long time. How did the visitor damage the clavichord? She hit the keys too hard. Our clavichord is kept in the living room. That's where we are keeping it. It has belonged to our family for years. It's the family's. The family have had the clavichord for many years. Who? Well, the answer is grandfather did. So the question would be, who bought it? We are not allowed to touch it. We mustn't touch it. What's it called? It's called a clavichord. It's kept in the living room. That's where we have it. The visitor damaged it. She broke it. Recently it was damaged. She damaged it lately. A friend of my father's is mending the clavichord. Mending is another way to say repair. Let's rewrite this sentence. It was my grandfather who bought the instrument many years ago. The instrument was bought by my grandfather many years ago. The instrument was bought by my grandfather many years ago. The instrument was bought by my grandfather many years ago. Well, this is the end of this lesson. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you learned a lot. Please join me in my next lesson, Lesson 11. One good turn deserves another.